Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and in today's video we're going to be talking T13 red blighted maps. But more specifically, what I wanted to find out is how profitable T13 maps are with teal oils versus crimson oils. So for this video, what we have is 15 maps with those teal oils versus 15 maps with those crimson oils. So if you guys didn't check out the last video, we established pretty much without a shadow of doubt that teal oils were improving the league specific rewards from these blighted encounters, but more specifically, they were improving overall the chest rewards you can expect. So turning something from like an armor chest into, for example, a breach chest in these encounters. And a lot of people have sent in their own data information as well as anecdotal experiences to confirm that hypothesis. So definitely very interesting there, and I'd recommend checking out that video if you haven't already. So let's get into it. Why were we going to be testing 15 teal versus 15 crimson? And the reason for that is to see if the increase in price between teal and crimson would justify the increase from 2 lucky chests to 3 lucky chests. And I believe we have got a bit of information surrounding that, and we can take a look at the results. But to begin with, I do quickly want to go over one small thing. And that is, similar to anyone who has done in like 5-way legions or 4-way legions, you will know that all of these kind of reward chest kind of mechanics are heavily RNG kind of swing based. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is you can run a set of 15 maps and get like 10 T15 beachheads, or like a ton of fossils, or maybe like a ton of like timeless incubators, something like that. But then you can do another set of 15 and maybe you get like 3 Chayula breach stones. So it can be completely all over the place, and you will see that reflected in the results, and you just need to keep that in mind when kind of trying to observe anyone's data with these maps. Obviously you can go on a dry spell, you could go on a massive rich streak and just get rich off 15. And you're going to have to do quite a few of these to kind of average out that massive lopsided RNG and then see a consistent profit. So yeah, similar to 4 and 5 ways, if you don't do enough of them, you may either lose money or make a ton money. It just depends where you fall on that kind of RNG scale. So let's get straight into the video with that in mind, and we're going to try and pick on a few things which have definitely changed from the T13 point and also from that crimson versus teal point. So let's get into it. With these maps, one thing I want to start out pointing out is the actual cost of the oils. So here we have obviously 45 teal oils. We've oiled up those maps, 15 of them, and we paid about 2C each for those oils. In our crimson test, we can see we paid a significant amount more for our oils. Definitely a lot more. 270 total cost versus 90. That's almost a cost increase of 3 times. Well, it is actually 3 times. So definitely very interesting, and we're going to need to see significant improvements in our results to justify that 300% increase in price. So let's get into the observations here and see what we can pick out of this data. To begin with, let's take a look at the oil section. So we're seeing a big increase compared to our yellow tests in terms of profit in the oil section, going from 134 chaos in profit to 712 chaos in profit. One other thing I just want to quickly point out is that these tests were conducted quite a few days ago, and I'm only just now getting around to making the video. So if anything, it seems a little bit out of whack in terms of pricing. That is because of the fact that it is a bit of a time gap. So let's continue. Where is all this money coming from in the oil section? We have to take a closer look. So here we can see we went from probably around 95 clear oils all the way up to 220, which is over double the amount increase in oils. So we already discovered this pattern though back when we did our blighted map kind of test in maps. We discovered that there was a breakpoint at the T13 tier kind of mark on the maps, and then you would get significantly more oils in T13s than you would in T12s. So that explains why this is happening. It's exactly the same in blighted maps, and you can expect a absolute ton more oils from those oil chests compared to lower tiers. And I imagine that's where a lot of the profit is coming from, and we can see it's not just with the lower tier oils. Let's look at Verdant here. We have 58 Verdant in the T13 there, and we have a whopping only 26 there. So again, over double the amount of oil at all different tiers. And we also see the introduction of stuff like silver and golden oils at the T13 point, and that is definitely going to contribute a lot to that profit margin, contributing from over half the amount. Another really interesting thing with the oil section here is that we almost sustained teal oils. And if you do the 3-to-1 recipe with those oils, you can actually over sustain the amount of oils you're inputting as an investment. So you'll actually have teal oils left over to sell to other players. So already that's 1 point in the favor of the teal oil test versus the crimson, because again, we didn't even close to sustain those crimson oils that we would be investing otherwise. So definitely a lot more easy to run those teal oils because you're going to be getting them all back anyway, and you can kind of run them infinitely and just have to buy the maps and maybe a few chisels then. So definitely pretty cool, and we can see a massive amount of loot from that oil section, almost enough actually just to pay off the initial investment by itself. Assuming you get 1 golden oil and a couple silvers, which is definitely not out of the question, you're going to be almost completely covered for your profit. But again, going back to what I said earlier, you need to run a few of these to kind of let that RNG average out and make sure you get one of those golden oils to kind of jack up the profit margins that you'll be getting. So pretty cool in my opinion, and definitely do quite a few of these if you want to be making a bit like kind of consistent profit. So pretty cool. Let's continue over here to the divination card section and kind of miscellaneous. There's a few things I wanted to chat about here. So one of the map types that we were running as part of the T13s was precincts. And you'll actually see here that we got 2 Saints treasures, and I wanted to make a point of pointing this out. Those were actually from the loot explosion, and we didn't actually do that many precincts. I think we did probably 4 or 5 in this test, this specific test, maybe like 4 I think it was, and we got 2 Saints treasures from that specifically. So there may be some merit to actually considering that loot explosion, because you do kill a considerable amount of monsters, and there is a decent pack size on these maps. So definitely do keep that in mind when you're running and rolling these, that you may definitely want to be looking at chiseling these, because you could just get a Saint's treasure there, which would definitely be some nice profit indeed. Again, another thing that I wanted to point out here, that kind of swings and roundabouts kind of RNG thing here. We got a Trailer Breachstone, which was worth a lot of money, and that's definitely going to contribute to the overall profit of this kind of set. But yeah, we got that from a normal breach chest. You could expect to get a pure one maybe, or like a pure Zoff or something like that. They're not completely out of the question. You can also see here that we got 2 beachhead maps, which were worth quite a decent amount, as well as some other miscellaneous stuff. So again, that RNG thing. The cool thing is though that if you do enough of these, it will even out. Again, I can't preach that enough. That was the same with 4 and 5 ways. You might get like a faded connection, which would spike it up and like cover the cost of the last few sets. And that's exactly how it's going to be with this. If you sit there and you just keep banging them out, bang, 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 you will make money until like, you're basically going to make money. You're not going to lose money. I'm trying to get at that, but you just need to run enough of them. So if you do one and you don't make money, just buy another one as long as you can afford it. So definitely pretty interesting there. Pretty normal kind of affair with the fossils here, nothing too different. And similar story with the breach splinters. We weren't seeing a massive increase in the amount of splinters we were getting or anything like that compared to the yellow ones. But we did actually see a massive increase in fragments. So this might just be completely RNG, but this might be painting a little bit of a picture of a higher quality of loot in these T13s not associated with oils. So we know that oils increase, but maybe some other rewards also increase. So let's take a look at that quick comparison here. We can of course see that we did get a considerable amount more fragments in this test, but if we look at the crimson test, can we see another considerable amount? We can't. So maybe it is just RNG and we're not actually seeing a pattern here. So we'll have to continue to look, and there is a few things which I do think might jump out at us. This is a similar story with the Legion splinters. There's no increase or decrease or anything kind of like that by running T13, so I don't think that's necessarily affected. Again, I also looked at the currency section here, and there was no massive like kind of outliers in terms of the amount of like fusings we got or anything like that. So again, I don't think that that's directly impacted here, but one thing you will actually be able to observe is the introduction of stuff like exalted shards and annulment shards, which were not present in our yellow tests pretty much at all. I think we might have gotten a few shards maybe. No, we got a harbinger orb here, but we didn't get any shards, I don't think. Yeah, no exalted shards, which is pretty interesting here, because we did actually get quite a few exalted shards overall here, looking at about 6 of them it seems right now. And we got a ton of annulment orbs shards as well. So definitely pretty interesting kind of stuff there. And one thing I also do want to point out is my anecdotal experience with this, and that is comparing yellow maps with red maps. I found I got a significant amount more Harbinger chests in red maps, and this is kind of a weird specific one to pick out here, but it is basically what I was experiencing. I got a lot more Harbinger chests and they dropped a lot more stuff. This could be RNG, but of course we got the beachheads, we got 2 ancient orbs here, we got a ton of horizon orbs, and we got annulment and exalted shards, which is definitely overwhelming evidence that this may actually be the case. And of course that actually makes up for a lot of the currency gains that we were seeing here. Hundreds of C worth of stuff actually. So definitely pretty interesting there. You may be able to see an increase in Harbinger kind of chests as you go up in the tiers. In terms of the incubators, nothing too crazy. It looks pretty similar from what I can see to our previous tests. So let's take another quick look down here. Where did we fall with profit? We fell at a comfy 10.4 exalt profit, which is actually over 100 C per map. Keeping in mind this was done a few days ago, so obviously prices have shifted. So definitely pretty interesting here. Minimal investment in terms of the oils and the maps leads to a pretty nice profit when you actually add everything up and you sell everything. Of course, again, going back to those Legion examples, people who ran the 4 and 5 ways will be no stranger to sitting down for a few hours after a big farming session, sorting everything out and getting it ready for sale. So that's going to be the same case here. You can expect that, but obviously with these kind of margins, you could expect to farm something like a headhunter in a day if you got consistent RNG, which is pretty insane. And any mechanic like that is generally very popular, and like you want to kind of exploit it while you can. And this may very well be one of those mechanics, similar to the 4 and 5 ways before everyone caught on. So definitely super interesting. Let's keep looking for patterns though, shall we? So overall, we did get a ton of scarabs similar to our 15 teal test with the yellows, a lot of scarabs as well, but we're starting to see a few gilded scarabs make their way into the results, as well as a good amount of polished scarabs and a few less of the rusted. So definitely pretty interesting there. We also saw a ton of stack decks specifically in this one, but that could be attributed just to getting a lot more div card chests versus, like, for example, scarab chests or fossil chests. So definitely pretty interesting here. Looks like the rewards are going to be wildly RNG kind of determined, but that is fine as long as you take into account that we seem to at the T13 level get more Harbinger rewards and better ones at that, as well as a significant more amount of oil and better ones there as well. So the only question remains is, should we be doing crimson oils on our maps? So I believe that the answer is a little bit unclear from my test, because obviously while we're investing more, the actual profit that we got was significantly less. Now you could say that this was the crimson oils doing it, or like the crimson oil expenses led to this, but that's actually just not the case. We actually just earned less overall from our maps, because I'm assuming RNG has come into it. And what that comes down to is that my sample size just wasn't big enough. I think if you wanted to get an accurate picture of how good crimson oils might be, you'd probably have to do 40 or 50 of each and then compare it after you have some consistent information, because stuff like the Chayula Breachstone, stuff like I think it's pretty much the Chayula Breachstone throwing it out, yeah. Maybe like more exalted shards, ancient orbs and stuff like that definitely does impact how much money you're going to make. If you look here, we didn't get any ancient orbs in this test. We still got a consistent amount of shards, and we got an annulment orb as well as a Harbinger orb in there. And we still actually did get 2 beachheads, which is definitely very interesting, keeping that kind of pattern alive. But again, we didn't get any Chayula Breachstone, didn't get those ancient orbs, so that's going to impact the final profit that we got. So yeah, it's difficult to tell. Let's look at some other data points. Did we get a significant more of anything else? We actually did get a significant amount more of the breach splinters here, but then when you actually compare that to, for example, the fragment chest, we actually got significantly less fragments. So it's difficult to tell whether the crimson oils were really doing all of what we were hoping them to do, because again, it was only a jump from 6 lucky chests to 9. Maybe this jump wasn't as noticeable as from 0 to 6, especially for that price investment. So I'm not sure that I would suggest going for the crimson oils just based off my own data and the fact that you're going to have to buy these things, because again, going over to our results here, you can't sustain these things, whereas in this test, we would have sustained the teal oils. Just on a consistency note here, we did get another very, very good turnout from that oil, and if we hadn't used the crimson oils, I imagine we still would have covered our costs quite nicely, so you can seemingly expect to get 1 golden oil per 15, based on my information here. And again, we got 2 silver oils in this set of 15 as well, kind of really painting a very consistent picture, and we're cashing in big time on these opalescents as well, which is quite nice. So definitely pretty interesting. We didn't get any big crazy drops in this crimson test. I think that's what really pushed it towards being less profitable. But again, that's going to be that RNG factor. Now, while you might think that's pretty kind of annoying, it's also what makes it exciting. You're going to get big 15 sets and you're going to get small 15 sets. And this, unfortunately, was one of the small sets. Having said that, though, we still did make 6 exalts, which is quite a nice profit. And for a, what would you say, probably 2 or 3 hour investment, that's not too bad. So 2 exalts per hour is definitely nothing to scoff at. And one cool thing here is if you just buy, say 100 blighted maps, oil them all up, roll them, and do them in a day, you're going to have the same amount of time pretty much selling everything as you would otherwise. So if you did 15, you're still going to have to sell those scarabs, and you're probably going to be able to sell them for a lot less because you don't have bulk. So if you run more of these, kind of economies of scale kicks in, and these will become better and better and better to run because you'll be able to kind of command more and more of stuff like the scarab market and charge more for your kind of wares. So definitely pretty interesting there. And basically my overall kind of conclusion here is as follows, and here's how I would approach blighted maps. I think that blighted maps are very profitable currently, buying them at the 65C price point for T13s. I would use teal oils on them because I think it's the most kind of effective use of your currency, kind of bang for your buck. In addition to that, you can sustain these things pretty much endlessly, it seems, from my data, as long as you use the 3-to-1 recipe, going from clear, sepia, amber up to verdant, and then 3-to-1 verdants into teals. You will be able to sustain pretty much every time, it seems. So buy that initial 45 and you'll be good to go for good. So pretty interesting there. So I would go T13s, chisel, alk, teal oil, and in we go. And I would see how you could go at doing these, as many as you can, and then you'll be getting some pretty nice returns, hopefully. Now, in terms of the actual mechanic and which build you're going to be doing and kind of how you should approach them, I think that this is actually quite a unique mechanic in the fact that clear speed has 0 value. It's not going to help you at all. It's not going to do anything for you. So maybe you want to be considering a safer build rather than a quicker build. A build that can fail 0% of these is going to be optimal. You don't want to be bricking any maps when they're at the 65 to 80C kind of price point, and one that can do it safely, effectively, and 100% of the time is going to be the best. So you're going to be looking at builds like Necromancer or any sort of chain kind of explodey kind of build that works on percentage HP, which maintains a big single target damage kind of skill as well. So something like what I would gravitate towards is Orb of Storms or Necromancer. Those are my 2 kind of top picks, and I would be going with those with a beefy amount of HP as well. And those are going to be my picks for doing this content, and I may just do one of those characters myself so that I can farm these solo. On that note, I do believe these are best farmed solo because the chests do not scale at all with group loot, and all you can expect from grouping up is a larger loot explosion and maybe a bit of a safer experience. But going with what we said before, that is not necessary if you have the correct build. So definitely pretty interesting, and that's how I would approach it, and what I may be doing on stream in a few days if you guys want to tune in. So with all that said, is the mechanic good? This is a bit of a different story to whether it's profitable. So I ran obviously probably about 100 blighted maps now or more, and I gotta say, for my playstyle, it's not exactly what I normally gravitate towards but in terms of profitability, it's there. You can make a ton of currency, you can make multiple mirrors if you wanted to do these kind of all day, and with that in mind, I do believe there is a sense of fun there. For players that like to make money, you're going to have a good time. But in terms of the actual gameplay itself, I do believe it needs something more. Whether that's a new oil system, whether that's a speed up button, whether that's just some sort of intensity increase or something like that, I do feel like the content becomes kind of monotone. It takes a long time to get started. Once it does get started, assuming you have the right build for it, it does kind of just drag on and you're just waiting for the loot to kind of pop up because it's so easy. So definitely, maybe we need to look at that, grind and gear, give us a way to speed up or scale the difficulty for additional rewards, and I think we would be in the perfect kind of like situation for a very fun endgame mechanic. But with all that said, hopefully you guys have all the information you need to farm up these maps at your leisure and make a lot of currency. See you guys in the next one or on stream, and hopefully you guys enjoyed.